The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Do writers have any input on the art team? Well, yes, absolutely they do. Let's read the mail. It says, hey Perch, I was wondering about the process of teaming writers and artists. Obviously, this is in regards to Marvel and DC. When a writer is assigned a book, are they told, okay, you're going to write this book, and this person will be your artist? Are they given a list of 3 to 5 available artists to choose from? Are they told your book has a budget of X dollars for art, and here's a list of artists and inkers and their rates, build a team? I'm sure there are writers who have more cachet than others who have more control over their own books. Okay. Well, it depends. So sometimes there's an artist already in mind, meaning the editorial team has an artist they want the writer to work with, or they have a certain pitch in mind, or they have a project that they've been wanting to get to an artist for a while. And so they'll basically define somebody. That definitely happens. But more often than not, there is no art team in mind. And the editor will go to the writer and say something along the lines of, hey, what about this guy? Or have you thought about this? Or I was thinking about this thing, or whatever. They'll pitch some names. But the artist often has a decent amount of input into it. Not full control, not like, hey, here's a bunch of money, go do what you want. I have heard of that system, but I haven't heard about it at the big two, I guess, in a long time. But more often than not, it's something along the lines of like, hey, here's this book. Okay, we're getting to agreement on it. What are you thinking for art? That's generally the question asked to the writer. And the writer generally has a couple names. One of the things that I think, if you're an aspiring writer and you're pitching the big two, it helps to get some art names in mind, people who would be okay working with you. Now, one little bit of tip, and I'm not going to mention names here, but there's a writer that I know who, basically didn't fully understand this. And when asked, what kind of artists are you thinking of? They immediately started listing off some friends of theirs on Instagram, people who are, unknown comic names. And if you're a newer comic writer, it's a terrible idea. You want to basically pitch people who are known quantities. And I'm not talking like, don't be stupid. Don't go in there like, I think Jim Lee. That's not going to work either. But you need to pitch some artists who are relatively known and ideally known for meeting a schedule. The message that you're communicating is, hey, I do know some artists. Hey, I'm also aware of which artists meet a deadline and which don't. And hey, I've had at least enough of contact with some people out there in the industry that I can bring a good quality talent to the table. Those are all good things for you as a writer. That presents a really good picture of your ability to kind of think about a project, manage a project, put some things together, and kind of you have the little X factor of you have a pretty good sense or a story around artists that complement, whatever pitch you're doing. If you're doing a horror type book, pitch a artist who has some horror credentials. Now, if you do have friends on Twitter or Instagram or whatever else, you want to give them some promotion, fine. But it's usually better to get a few books under your belt so you are seen as a known, before you start passing in people who are kind of random unknowns. And the other thing you want to do is if you are relatively unknown and you're coming in to do a comic and you pitch an artist who is, nobody's ever heard of. And what's going to happen is the writer is going to go to contact them and the writer is going to Google them. And if they come to their Instagram or their, Twitter and the person is a fucking nut job, you are also kind of a nut job. It transfers immediately over to you. Don't pitch somebody who has a terrible reputation or, 5 seconds online immediately reveals themselves to be a crazy person. That looks bad on you. It's better to avoid that. So go out there and, pitch something, but think about some artists that, work well with your style. Again, known quantities, everything else, fairly easy to work with. So it's a good idea as a writer to reach out to a bunch of artists that are already in the business and say, hey, I'm pitching to the big two. They often ask for suggestions on art team to bring. I've been a fan of your work. Was curious if you still do work. Kind of roughly what money do you have? To be clear, I'm not going to be paying you, but I am, I want to at least throw some names out when I do my pitch. 9 times out of 10, the artist will be flattered, thankful. It's going to be a fine relationship, whether anything happens or not. It's actually going to make the artist think kindly of you, and it's going to set up a good kind of relationship. If you're only going for unknown people you're friends with on Twitter, that's nice, but again, that doesn't move you forward any. I'll say it this way as well. If you're a relatively new writer, then having somebody with more credibility than you kind of in your corner, in your circle, is beneficial. You're going to basically borrow off of their credibility. And if you're a good, upstanding person, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with borrowing off that business benefit. However, if you try and borrow off somebody who's a lunatic, that then you also become a lunatic. So it runs both ways. But generally speaking, the writer has a pretty decent amount of say over the artist. Again, not always. Marvel and DC in particular, the bigger companies often will have an artist that they've been wanting to work with, or somebody that was supposed to be on a project, but then they freed up. And so they may give you suggestions like, hey, we'd really like you to work with Bernard Chang here, or who knows, like here's somebody that we think we're trying to find a project for. So would you be interested? And in that case, the editor is being more of a matchmaker. They have an artist, they have you trying to put some things together. But one of the things that I found actually has been somewhat surprising is, there's a case where the writer pitches somebody that seems way above their league, and it just that not realizing that the artist needs work, and the editor is too junior, doesn't know the person, and so you wind up to getting a killer talent on your project. And you had no idea you were going to get an artist so good, but you did, because, you were bold and you asked and you tried, and that's pretty cool. So don't sleep on shooting or punching up, if you will, for a really good art team. There's a lot of good people out there. Really good people who, and bear in mind, you may be saying at this point, it's the editor's job to know what these people are and where they are and, search them out. Yeah, I agree. It should be their job, but you got to understand that they're not doing that job in a lot of cases. And so you get artists out there who are really talented people who just nobody has contacted them. And it's not because they're blacklisted. It's not because nobody cares. It's because the editors are not building that network. A lot of editors today do not build a network beyond the immediate people that they're working with. They don't go out and do landscaping for talent. And if they do, they're generally starting with the writers over the artists. So there's just a bunch of people out there who you could probably pick up and do work with really easily. But anyway, that's generally the way it works. There's exceptions to every rule, of course, but usually speaking, the editors are looking for the writer to have a perspective and bring something to the table in terms of the artist. Okay, there you go. So does that work though? Is that what you expected? Is that how you thought the industry worked? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.